Hi little peoples, welcome to 6th standard biology online class. In the previous class we started lesson number 16, garbage in, garbage out. In that lesson we saw about dealing with garbages, that is what happens to the garbage after the Karamcharis collect the garbage. We also saw about landfill. Next we saw about the difference between biodegradable and non-biodegradable garbages. We also saw about compost. Next we saw about the burning of leaves and garbages in open area, which you all know is considered as illegal. Okay, did you read the lesson? I think you would have enjoyed your Pongal holidays, but I think you would also have read the lesson. Okay, so next we will see about vermicomposting. So in Tamil we can say as manpulu uram. Okay, so we know that we can supply manure to plants in the form of compost. So we are being friends to the plants, isn't it? Do you know that earthworms are called farmer's friend? Do you know why? Earthworms are known as farmer's friend because of the multitude of services they provide that improves soil health and plant health. So earthworm is considered to be a good indicator of a healthy soil because they improve soil structure, water holding capacity, moisture content, etc. And these earthworms also increases the nutrient availability and degrade pesticide residues. So these earthworms loosens the soil, which makes the soil fit for plant growth easily possible, and that is why earthworms are called as farmer's friend. Okay, so a type of earthworm called red worm is used for composting. So this method of preparing compost with the help of red worms is called vermicomposting. Now let us see how to make manure by vermicomposting by another activity. So take your book and see the activity. We can also try this at our homes and schools. For this, first dig a pit of about 30 centimeter deep, or we can use a wooden box. A wooden box should be placed at a place which should be neither too hot nor too cold. Next, spread a net or chicken mesh at the bottom of the pit or the wooden box. So if you don't have a net or a chicken mesh, we can also use 1 to 2 centimeter thick layer of sand as an alternative. So after spreading the sand in the pit or the wooden box, spread some vegetable and fruits waste over this layer of sand. We can also use green leaves, pieces of dried stalks of plants, husk, or pieces of newspaper or cardboard to spread over the layer of sand. That is, we can use biodegradable waste over the soil. Non-biodegradable waste should not be used for this purpose. Also, shiny or plastic coated papers should also not be used for this purpose of vermicomposting. Now, we can also use dried animal dung to spread over the sand or wire mesh. So after that, we should sprinkle some water to make this layer of waste wet. We should not use excess water. Okay. Also, do not press the layer of waste. We should keep this layer loose so that waste layer has sufficient air and moisture space. This is the setup for vermicomposting. Now the pit or the wooden box is ready to welcome the red worms, that is the earthworms. So now only we are going to put some red worms into the pit. Okay. So for this we have to buy some red worms or take some red worms from some other places and put them in the pit. After putting the red worms in the pit, that is over the wastes, cover them with a gunny bag, that means chakapai, or an old sheet of cloth or a layer of grass over the red worms. Now the red worms are ready for composting, but before that we have to give food for the red worms. So we can give them vegetable and fruit wastes, coffee and tea remains, and weeds which are taken from the fields or garden. It will be a good idea to bury this food for the worms for about 2 to 3 centimeters inside the pit. We should not use waste which may contain salt, pickles, oil, vinegar, meat and milk preparations as food for the red worms, because the above said things or foods which we give as for the worms usually decompose, producing disease causing small worms which will also start growing in the pit. So we don't want these disease causing germs or worms, we only want red worms. So do not use these things. Okay. So after a few days, gently mix and move the top layer of the soil. We have to observe what is happening. Another interesting fact about earthworms. Do you know that earthworms have teeth or not? Actually, they do not have a teeth, but they have a structure called gizzard. What is that? Gizzard. This gizzard helps the worms in grinding their food. So we have teeth for grinding the food. Likewise, the red worms have gizzard, which is used for grinding their food. So we can also mix powdered eggshells or seashells along with the food for the worms, that is the waste. This would help the red worms in grinding their food. A red worm can eat food equal to its own weight in a day. Isn't it interesting? Yes. Also, red worms do not survive in very hot or very cold surroundings. Most importantly, they also need moisture around them. That is why when you see a red worm, it is always moisture contents. It have moisture content over its body. Okay, it is not dry. If you take good care of the worms, then in a month's time, the number of worms in the pit will double. That is, if you put 1 worms, it will become 2. Or if you put 2 worms, it will become 4 and so on. Now, observe the contents of the pit carefully after 3 to 4 weeks. That is, we have to wait for 3 to 4 weeks. So, what will we observe? We will see loose soil-like materials in the pit. That is called vermicompost, manpuru uram. Okay, this vermicompost is now ready to be used as manure. Now, put some waste at food in one corner of the pit. So, what will happen now? So, most of the worms will shift towards that part of the pit where we have put some wastes. So, they will vacate the place and go to the places where we have put the food. So, the worms will shift towards the part of the pit where we have put the waste. Now, remove the compost from the vacated part of the pit and dry it in the sun for a few hours. So, now this is the vermicompost that is ready for use for plants as manure. Now you can see that most of the worms in the pit where we have taken the manure, now we can use these worms for preparing more compost. That is, we can use these worms in some other pits for making manure called as a compost, or we can share them with another user for making compost. This excellent vermicompost thus formed can be used in our pots, gardens or fields. So this will be the best manure produced naturally. This is like getting the best out of waste, isn't it? That is, out of the large amount of biodegradable waste, we can produce best manure which can be used by the plants. Those who have large agricultural fields can try this concept of vermicomposting in large pits and produce large quantities of vermicomposts and use them in their fields as manures instead of chemical fertilizers. This can save a lot of money for the farmers because chemical fertilizers are more expensive, and they are all not only expensive but they are not good for the soil and for the plants itself because they have chemicals inside. So this vermicomposting is a boon for farmers. Not only this is cheap than chemical fertilizers but more safe than chemical fertilizers. So all the farmers and those other peoples who grow plants can use this vermicompost as a manure. So I think with this we can end this session. The next class will continue with the next part. So students, don't forget to read the lesson. We'll see you in the next class. Okay, bye.